If you need to pass GED math, know that I put this video together to help you out. In this video, you'll get tips, tricks, and strategies and practice questions that'll help you get ready for GED math and hopefully help you move ahead faster to bigger and better things in life, whether your goal is to go to college, to get a better job, or to join the military. Whatever it happens to be, hopefully this will help you out. Simplify this polynomial. 4x plus 2x cubed minus 2x plus 8x cubed plus 12y minus 3y minus 3x. So now's your chance to pause the video if you'd like to try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so if you got stuck on this, don't worry, because I'm just going to break down a strategy to get these questions right on your test. So what I want to do is focus on the like terms. And if you're not sure what like terms are, don't worry, because I'm going to explain it. So my first step here is I want to find everything that has an x cubed. In other words, every number that has an x to the power of 3 after it, I want to find those, and that's what I'm going to start with. Okay, so note that I'm not going to do anything with the 4x for right now. I'm not going to do anything with the 12y. I'm just looking for numbers that have x to the power of 3 after them. Okay, and so basically I've got 2x cubed and 8x cubed. So the sign in front of the x cubed is addition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 plus 8, and I'm just going to bring the x to the power of 3 along for the ride. All right, so x to the power of 3 and x cubed are two ways of saying the same thing. And I do apologize, they're using some kind of power tool outside of my apartment. This is literally the only time I had to record this week, so I'm going to try to reduce that when I edit, but I do apologize for that. So now what I want to do is I'm going to focus on terms that have x's in them. All right, so here I see I've got 4x. Here I've got minus 2x, and I do have to consider the sign. Here I've got minus 3x. All right, so I'm just going to go left to right here, and I'm going to do 4x minus 2x. Okay, so 4x minus 2x is going to be 2x minus 3x. All right, so I have 2x minus 3x now. All right, and so that's going to just give me minus x. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And now what I'm going to do is I want to work with my y's. All right, so this is pretty easy now since they're right next to each other. I have 12y minus 3y, and if I do basically 12 minus 3, that's just going to give me 9y, and it's positive, right? It's positive 9y, so I just do plus 9y down here. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky if you haven't studied this yet, but the correct answer here is A. Hopefully this makes sense. Solve for x. Negative 25, parenthesis, x minus 3, parenthesis, is less than 100. Is the answer A, x is greater than negative 1, B, x is less than negative 1, C, x is greater than 1, or D, x is less than negative 21? Now is your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so basically, the way that I would start this is I'm going to distribute this negative 25. And what that means is I'm going to do negative 25 times x, which gives me negative 25x. And next I'm going to do negative 25 times negative 3. All right, and I have to take into account the fact that a negative times a negative is going to give me a positive. So I have negative 25x plus 75 is less than 100. So after I do that, what I'm trying to do is I want to solve this for x. So I want to approach this just like I would if this was an equal sign instead of a less than sign. Okay, but there's one catch here. All right, so whenever I work with an inequality, what I have to do is if I divide or multiply both sides by a negative number, I have to take this sign and flip it around. Okay, so it's not as complicated as it seems. Like I said, the best way to start is to just imagine that this is an equal sign and just try to solve this equation for x. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to subtract 75 from both sides of my equation here. Okay, so when I do that, if I rewrite, I've got negative 25x is less than 25. Okay, so now if I've got negative 25 times x, and I just want to get the x, I've got to subtract by negative, or sorry, I don't subtract. I've got to divide by negative 25. And in math, whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other. So I'm going to divide by negative 25 on both sides here. All right, but notice how I'm dividing both sides by a negative number. So that means that I'm going to have to take this less than sign and I'm going to flip it around to make it a greater than sign. Okay, so I have x is greater than negative 1. All right, so if you haven't studied inequalities yet, this might have been a little tricky, but the correct answer here is A. So the key to remember for an inequality question is, at first, I would just recommend solving it as if this was an equal sign. And then once you get to the end, you have to ask yourself, did I multiply or divide both sides by a negative number? And if you did, you're going to have to take that sign and you're going to have to reverse it. Please write the number below in scientific notation. And it says, please write your answer in the box below. So obviously you're not going to be able to write your answer through the screen, but just put down maybe on a sheet of paper, or you can do it in your head if that works, whatever you think the answer should be. And here's your number, 45 million. So let me give you a chance to pause the video, try to figure this out. And as always, we're just going to go over it whenever you're ready. Okay, so if you had trouble with this, don't worry about it. Basically, the idea with scientific notation is I want to take the decimal, which is always right here at the end of the number for a number like this, and I want to move it in between the first and second digit. So in other words, I want to take this decimal point at the end of the number, and I want to move it between the 4 and the 5. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to count up how many steps I take. So I go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I write down here 4.5 times 10 to the 7th. All right, and that's how I do a question like this. Together, Jan and Bob earn $3,210 per month. If Jan earns $230 more per month than Bob, how much does Bob earn per month? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? Now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. The first step that I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the fact that Jan and Bob earn $3,210, and I'm going to turn that into an equation. All right, so I'm just going to say J for Jan and B for Bob, and we can say that J plus B equals 3,210. So this is the first equation we can write. Now the second equation comes from the fact that Jan earns $230 more per month than Bob. All right, so I can say J equals what Bob earns plus 230. In other words, 230 more per month than Bob. So I've got two equations here. And what I want to do is I'm going to take the fact that I know that J equals B plus 230. And I'm going to come back up here into my first equation and see where I have this J here. I'm going to replace this J with B plus 230. So let me do that now. So I've got B plus 230 plus B equals 3,210. Now this is another case of combining the like terms here. All right, so I can't add B to 230, but I can add B to B. So B plus B is just going to be 2B. So let me rewrite this again. So I have 230 plus 2B equals 3,210. And we're running out of space a little bit here, so hopefully you can read this. But my next step is I want to subtract by 230 on both sides. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to get this B by itself here. Okay, and whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So 3,210 minus 230 gives me 2,980. So when I rewrite, I have 2b equals 2,980. And since I have 2b, or 2 times b, I want to divide by 2 here. When I do that, the 2's will cancel out, leaving me with b on the left-hand side, which is what I want. But whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other. So I'm going to have to divide by 2 over here. And once I do that, I see that b equals 1,490. So answer choice B is the correct answer. So hopefully you got B. If you did, great job. If not, great job for sticking with it. Hopefully this makes sense now. Line C passes through the points 5 and -1 and 9, 11 on the coordinate grid. What is the slope of line C? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? And just to save you some time, I put the formula for slope right here. This little M symbol means slope. I put this right here, but just know that on your test, you're going to want to look this up on the formula sheet. So let me give you a chance to pause the video, try the question out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so let's talk about this question. So basically, what we want to do here is start off by labeling the numbers here. Okay, so this first pair right here, what I want you to understand is that the first number in the pair is always going to be an x. So this 5 right here, this is going to be my x1. And this -1 right here, all right, I'm going to call this y1. Okay, now this pair right here, 9 and 11, the first number is always going to be an x. And since I already made my 5 my x1, I make my 9 my x2. And this 11 right here, all right, the second number in the pair is always going to be a y. And this time, I'm going to call this y2, since I already called -1 y1. Okay, so this is how I would recommend starting, at least when you're first learning how to do slope questions. And eventually, maybe you can skip doing the labeling. But if you get the labeling right here, then it's just a matter of plugging the numbers into the formula. All right, so right here in the formula where it says y2, I'm going to plug in 11. And up in the formula here where it says y1, I'm going to take -1 because that's my y1 and plug that in. All right, now in this case, since it's y2 minus y1, it would be 11 minus -1, which is the same as 11 plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with my numbers down here. So my x2 is 9, so I'm going to take this x2 in the formula here, and I'm going to replace it with 9. Same with this x1. I'm going to come over here and find the number I labeled as x1, and I'm going to put that in here for, I'm going to put 5 in here for x1. All right, so I'm going to end up with the slope equals 11 plus 1 divided by 9 minus 5. All right, so 11 plus 1 is 12, and 9 minus 5 is 4. And if I do 12 divided by 4, the final answer I'll get is 3. So the correct answer here is 3. Great work if you got that right. If not, great work for sticking with it here. Hopefully this makes sense now. Jared is starting a retro video game club in his city. Jared sent out 1,000 applications for new members to join the club. If 35% of the people who received applications joined, how many people joined? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now is your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so if you already have a strategy that you like to use for percent questions, then that's fine. You can stick with that. If you don't have a strategy yet, I would recommend this formula right here. Part over whole equals percent over 100. And I think that this is a pretty easy formula. It might seem a little complicated right now, but once you see an example or two of this formula, hopefully it won't be so tricky to understand how to use it. But basically, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the numbers here and I'm going to plug them into the formula. All right. So for my part, that is what we're trying to figure out. So I'm just going to put a letter in for the part. I'm just going to put an X in for the part because that's what we need to figure out. Now the whole is going to be 1,000. And if you're ever confused about which number is the part and which number is the whole, just know that the whole is always going to be the bigger number. All right. And now for my percent, when I come over here to the percent sign in the formula, all I do is I just take that number 35 and I just put that into the formula. And the 100 down here, I just leave that like this. All right, so this is how I would set the question up if I use this formula. And just know that some textbooks, they'll say part over base equals percent over 100. Some say part over whole. It just, I guess, depends on what your textbook says. But anyway, all we're going to do now is we're going to solve this equation for x. Okay, so the easiest way I think to do that would be to multiply by 1,000 on both sides. Okay, so if I multiply by 1,000 over here, the thousands cancel out. And if I multiply by 1,000 over here, in my calculator, I would do 35 times 1,000 divided by 100. And the answer would be 350. So this is not the only way to do a question like this, but hopefully this makes sense. This video's champion shoutout goes to a test taker who just passed math with a 150 and says, "And I hate math, my absolute worst subject." So if you're watching this right now and you're struggling with math, maybe you hate math, or at least maybe you'd rather be doing something else than learning math right now, just know that here's an example of someone who did it, and if you just keep working hard and keep working smart, eventually you'll get done too. Ryan is a big fan of the band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The chart below shows the number of times last month he listened to his 5 favorite songs. What is the mean number of times Ryan listened to these 5 songs last month? So now is your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so in this question here, we have to find the mean. The mean is just another word for the average. And these questions do come up quite commonly, so it's important to know how to do mean questions on the test. And the first step is to just take all of the numbers in the data set, which we have right here, and we want to add them up. And we want to divide by the total number of numbers in our data set. And basically all I mean by that is we want to count up how many numbers we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It also tells us up here that we have 5 songs. So you don't necessarily need to count them up, but we want to add these numbers up and divide by 5. Okay, so if we do that, we should get 14 as our answer here. Okay, so 14 is the correct answer. On a map shown below, the scale reads 0.75 inches equals 50 miles. What is the real distance in miles between Minneapolis and Chicago? Now, right here we see this little map down here, and this is telling us that on this map, the distance between Minneapolis and Chicago is 6.135 inches. And I'd like you to take this information right here and basically turn this into miles. And I'll give you a chance to pause the video and try this, and if you have any trouble with this, don't worry, because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to try this out if you wanted to. So basically here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 6.135 inches, and I'm going to leave the inches right here. And I'm going to multiply it by a fraction. And I'm going to take this information up here, and I'm going to turn this into a fraction. All right. And I'm going to set it up so that the 0.75 inches goes in the bottom of my fraction. And if you're wondering, how did I know to put the 0.75 down here? Well, whatever the units are of the first number, in this case, it's inches, I have to make sure that I put the number in the bottom of the fraction that also has inches. So if I'm starting with 6.135 inches, all right, I'm going to write a fraction, and when I set my fraction up, the number with the inches has to go down in the bottom. The reason is because we've got inches divided by inches, and the inches will cancel out. And when I do my calculation, the answer is going to be in miles, which is what we want. So basically, in short, all we're doing here is 6.135 times 50 divided by 0.75, okay? And when we do that in our calculator, hopefully you'll get 409, and that is the correct answer here. So A is the right answer. Do you have a favorite mug? Let us see it and tell us why you love it. Okay, so right here, this is a mug, and it's a cartoon of me with my cat Tommy. What's normal where you live but might seem weird to the rest of the world? Probably putting French fries on food. What was your first job ever? I was a cashier at a gas station. My second job, I delivered pizza. Name a healthy food you enjoy and an unhealthy food that you find hard to resist. So a healthy food I like would be watermelon or pineapple. An unhealthy food I find hard to resist is really anything with sugar, any kind of sugary candy. What's a sauce, condiment, or dressing you couldn't live without? Probably ranch. What is the equation of a line passing through the points 1, 10 and 6, -2? And just to save you some time, I gave you the 2 formulas that you'll have to use to get this question right up here on the screen. It's up to you to figure out how to use these formulas. I just gave them to you to save some time. But note that on your test, you'll want to look these up on the formula sheet. So let me turn it over to you. I'll give you a chance to pause the video, try this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so equation of a line questions are tricky for a lot of test takers, so if you had trouble with this, don't worry about it. So what I want you to do first, whenever you get a question like this, what is the equation of a line passing through the points? The first step is always going to be to calculate the slope. And we do that using this formula right here. So for slope calculations, I like to start by labeling the numbers in each pair. So the first pair is 1 and 10. So this one right here, the first number in a pair is always an x. So I'm going to call the 1 x1. The second number in the pair is always a y. So this 10, I'm going to call this y1. Now I come to the next pair, which is 6 and -2. So the first number is always an x. So this time I'm going to call 6 my x2. And the second number in the pair is always a y. So my -2, I'm going to call that y2. So now what I want to do next is I'm going to use the formula up here for slope. And yes, this little m symbol means slope. And I'm going to plug the numbers into the formula. And if you're not sure what that means, let me show you. So I want to do y2 minus y1. So what is my y2? Well, if I check the label, my -2 is y2. So I'm going to put that in here. So I have y2 minus y1, and my y1 is 10. Okay, so now I want to do the numbers on the bottom. So for the bottom of the fraction, I have x2 minus x1. So right here, my x2 is 6, so that goes here. My x1 is 1, so I do 6 minus 1. Now, you can use your calculator if you want to, however you want to do this step here, but we're going to find that the answer here for the slope part of the question is -12 over 5. So now we're going to use the second formula up here, and I like to start by just rewriting this formula but plugging the numbers in. So I'm going to do y minus y1, and my y1 is 10 right here. So it's the same y1 that doesn't change, and so I have that equals the slope. And this m symbol right here, remember that means the slope. And in the first step, I just found that that is -12 over 5 times x minus x1. And so for x1, I'm going to use the same number. So my x1 is just 1. So that's easy enough. All right. So this is how we would set up the first step. Okay. Now, some people like to add the 10 over to the other side right away here. Some people like to wait. It doesn't really matter. Let me first start by distributing this -12 over 5. And when I say distribute, really what I mean is we're just going to do -12 over 5 times x, which is just -12 over 5x. And then I have to do -12 over 5 times -1. And it's really important to remember to account for this minus sign right here. That's a really common place that it's easy to make a mistake. But anyway, we'll end up with plus 12 over 5. Okay, so now let me add the 10 to both sides. So I have y minus 10. And if I add 10, the 10s will cancel out on the left-hand side of our equation, leaving us with just y. But whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other. So now we have y equals -12 over 5x plus 12 over 5 plus 10. All right, so this is just a matter of adding like terms. All right, so I'm going to, in other words, the two numbers here that don't have an x next to them, I'm going to add these up. So I want to do 12 over 5 plus 10. And there's really two ways to do that. Probably the fastest way to do it is to just use your calculator. You could get a common denominator and do that if you're comfortable doing that, but I think it's probably easier in this case to just press this button on your calculator right here. All right, and then we're going to do 12 over 5. So I have 12 here, then take this little arrow right here, push it. That takes the little flashing light down to the bottom part of the fraction. So then I'm going to enter 5, all right? And I'm going to press this arrow right here again. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do plus 10. Okay, and when I hit my equal sign down here, I get 62 over 5. All right, and so really you could have done this by hand if you wanted to. If you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But I'm just giving you another option. It's up to you to decide on your test if you get a scenario like this. If you want to do it by hand or in your calculator. And for the sake of time, I just did it in my calculator right now. So I'd have y equals -12 over 5x plus 62 over 5, which corresponds to answer choice B, all right? So one other takeaway from this that I want you to see here is that it's sometimes helpful to just glance at the answer choices before you start doing a calculation. Because see how every single answer choice here, except D isn't really a good example of this, but see how the answers are left in fraction form in each answer choice? All right, sometimes they might have these written as decimals. And so the way to know when you're doing your calculation, if you want to do your calculation in fractions or in decimals, is just glance over at the answer choice. All right, that's all you'd have to do. So I was going to see if Tommy wanted to jump in here and try to teach one of these questions, give me a break, but it doesn't look like he's going to. It looks like he just wants to lay on the textbook, so I'll just do the next question myself. What is the sixth number in the sequence below? And the sequence is 2, 5, 11, 23, 47. And I'd like you to pause the video and try to figure out which number goes here in the blank. And whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll go over the answer. Okay, so if you had trouble with this, don't worry because we're just going to take a look at it. So the pattern here is each number gets doubled and then gets 1 added to it. So for example, if I double 2, I get 4. And then if I add 1 to that, I get 5, which is the next number in the sequence. So if I take my 5 and I double it, I get 10. If I add 1 to that, I get 11. All right, same thing with the 11. 11 times 2 is 22, plus 1 gets us 23. And hopefully you see the pattern here is that each number, we're going to double it and add 1. So to get the answer here, you'd have to do 47 times 2, and then add 1 to it. And that gets you 95. All right, so really kind of the key here was just studying these numbers and hopefully seeing that pattern. And if you didn't see the pattern, all right, hopefully this makes sense now. So I picked this next question as this video's Champions Challenge question, which means that in my opinion, this is the hardest question in the video. So if you disagree and think there was another question that was harder, just let me know down below. Good luck with the Champions Challenge question. Thank you for watching. The width of a rectangular backyard is 15 feet less than its length. If the area of the backyard is 100 square feet, what is the perimeter? So I've given you the formulas for the area of a rectangle, which is area equals length times width, and for the perimeter, which is P equals 2L plus 2W. And it's obviously, again, on your test, you're going to want to find these off the formula sheet. But let me give you a chance to try this. So you can pause the video now, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, as always, we'll go over the question. So the name of the game here is to find the perimeter. And if I knew the length and the width, I could simply plug the numbers in here and I would pretty easily come up with the answer. But unfortunately, it's not that easy here because we don't know the length and we don't know the width. But what we do know is that the width of the rectangular backyard is 15 feet less than the length. So in other words, the width equals the length minus 15. And we also know that the area is 100 square feet. All right, so hopefully the fact that this area was given to us, all right, this is kind of like our clue here that we want to do something with this area formula here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take this 100, I'm going to substitute it into the area formula for A because we know that the area is 100 square feet. And I know that the area equals length times width, and I don't know what the length is. And I don't know what the width is either, but I do know that the width equals L minus 15. So I'm going to come into my area formula, and I'm going to replace this W with L minus 15. Okay, so this is my first step here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this L, and I'm going to distribute. So in other words, I'm going to do L times L. And if I do L times L, that's going to just be L squared. And I'm also going to distribute it over here to this negative 15. So that will be minus 15 L. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to subtract the 100 over to this side here. So I now would have L squared minus 15L minus 100. Okay, and now that we have this, the next step is going to be to do some factoring here. And if you haven't studied how to factor quadratic equations yet, this might be kind of confusing for you, so I would recommend, if you haven't studied that skill yet, I'll try to remember to put a link down below to my video. I often forget to put links down below, so just remind me in the comments and I'll be glad to do that for you. But the idea with factoring is that what we want to do is we want to take the first number here, which is just 1, and multiply it by the last number here. So you do 1 times negative 100. All right, and we have that negative 100. And the next thing I want to do is I want to find two numbers that will multiply together to give me negative 100, but they have to add up to be negative 15. All right, so let's list pairs of numbers that will multiply together to give us negative 100 first. So obviously you could do 1 and negative 100. You could also do negative 1 and 100. You could do 10 and negative 10. All right, so these will both multiply. This will multiply together to give me negative 100. But we need something that will add up to negative 15. So what about negative 20 and 5? Well, if I multiply negative 20 and 5, I do get negative 100. And if I add them up, if I do negative 20 plus 5, I get negative 15. So we have a winner here. This is the pair that I want to use. Okay, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you right now, but you're doing a really good job if you're following me so far. So basically, what I want to do is I'm going to rewrite this, and I can do L minus 20 and L plus 5. All right, so it's L minus 20 because there's a negative in front of this 20, and it's L plus 5 because it's positive 5. So basically, all I did was I just factored this quadratic equation, okay? And this is what I got. Now, what I can do is I want to set each of these equal to 0, and I have L minus 20 equals 0. And to get the L by itself, I add 20 to both sides here. And if I do that, I would say that I have L equals 20 as one solution to my quadratic equation. The other solution here, I would take this L plus 5, I put that right here, my L plus 5, and set this equal to 0. And again, I'm going to just subtract 5 on both sides this time. And if I do that, I'll see that my other solution is L equals negative 5. Okay, so again, this is basically, counting on your knowledge of how to factor quadratic equations for this step of the question. Okay, so I've got my two solutions to the quadratic equation. And which one do I go with here? Well, we can't have negative length for a question like this, so I'm going to just get rid of the one that has the negative. And we're going to proceed forward with the assumption that L equals 20. Okay, so I did all that work to figure out that L equals 20. All right, so I knew I threw a ton of stuff at you, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear all this out of the way here, and we're going to finish the question. But just keep in mind that, if you had trouble with this, you can go back and rewind it, or even pause the video, take all the time you need, because I am about to clear this stuff out of the way. All right, so really, really great job if you're sticking with me so far. I know that this is tedious, but this is important, because now we know what L equals. So all I have to do is go back to my formula where I have W equals L minus 15, and I'm going to plug 20 in for L. So let me do that here. So W equals 20 minus 15, and 20 minus 15 is 5. All right, so after all is said and done, I know that L equals 20 and W equals 5. So all I have to do is take this perimeter formula, and I'm just going to plug the numbers in. So P equals 2L. So 2L would be 2 times 20. And I'd add that to 2 times W, which would be 2 times 5. All right, so if I rewrite this, I would have P equals 40, because 2 times 20 is 40, plus 10, because 2 times 5 is 10. And if I add these up, I get 50. So if you got 50 as the answer, really, really great job. If not, hopefully you were able to follow this. But there's no penalty for guessing on the test, so it's always better to at least guess on a question than to leave it blank. Also, feel free to use your calculator as much as you need to on the test. And also know that if you feel like you're spending too much time on any given question, it's okay to mark that question and come back to it later if you have more time.